I am super excited to introduce our next guest. We'd like to welcome Congresswoman Katie Porter. Welcome. We are so happy to have you with us tonight.
Thank you so much, and it's fun to be on here with Ajin Poo. Fun fact, this is the second event I've done today with Ajin. Ms. Poo was testifying before the House Oversight Committee. And then the second fun fact is that Ajin and I went to high school together, which is a little known fact. And so our high school class produced in Ajin an amazing champion for the American people. So.
That's absolutely amazing. As an excellent segue to the next thing that I was going to ask you. This is the debut of the Moment with Move On series, and we are actually starting out, rather than doing formal introductions, we've been setting up playing a little game where our audience gets to learn some more about you and play along by sharing 3 things about you. And the audience gets to guess whether or not those things are true. So we have a list of 3 things about you that might be true, might be made up, and we'd love to ask our viewers in the chat to guess if each one is true or false as we go. Does that sound good to you? Excellent. Good. So I actually have a list of 3 facts from you. Would you like to share this first fact, or should I be mysterious and introduce
Go ahead.
All right, great. So the first fact is Representative Katie Porter has traveled around the world solo. So that's the first fact, and it's up to you to see whether or not that is true or false, what your gut instinct is on that. The second fact is her minivan has 200,000 miles on it, over 200,000 miles. And the third fact is her favorite food is mac and cheese. So feel free to guess in the chat what you think, whether or not those things are true or false. And Congresswoman, would you like to illuminate us as to which of those things are true or false?
Yes. So the first fact, I took a solo trip around the world. That is true. I did that between college and going to law school. I went west to east, starting in San Francisco and going all the way around to Morocco. It was about 4.5 months. And my backpack that I took with me weighed about 21 pounds. And I threw everything away when I was done with the 4 or 5 months. I never want to see those 2 t-shirts and that pair of pants and that pair of shorts ever again. The second fact you mentioned was that my minivan has over 200,000 miles on it. And that is false. It does have a duct tape side view mirror right now because somebody hit it and did not act in an accountable fashion and did not leave a note. But it actually only has 134,000 miles on it and is going strong. I just had it repaired, and I intend to continue driving it until I hit that 200,000 mile mark, or until my kids all go to college, whichever comes first. And then the third fact is that mac and cheese is my favorite food. False. I hate mac and cheese. And I'm like a weirdo, I realize, but I despise mac and cheese. It's a childhood scarring experience that involved the stomach flu that I will not share with you. But to this day, I do not, if I even sit at a restaurant and someone orders it, I ask to be reseated. So I have this like weird, creepy aversion to macaroni and cheese. So please don't send me, send me whiteboard markers. Don't send me mac and cheese, please.
That's hilarious. That was super fun. And I don't think I've ever met anyone with like a near mac and cheese phobia before. So thank you for being the first person I've met with that. And so now we'd actually like to jump to the first question. Representative Porter, can you tell us about the next big fight that's gearing up in Congress around the recovery package and what our members should know about that?
Yeah, so what we're working on right now in Congress is going to be the transportation, the infrastructure bill, and really thinking about how do we make investments in our country that help our economy, not just recover, but as President Biden has said, build back better. And one of the things that's really exciting about this is the way that we're thinking about infrastructure investments is not just about jobs, in the construction industry, but about what we mean by infrastructure, including childcare, caregivers, people who take care of seniors, and investing in that caregiving economy. And that's really what it is. It's in its own economy. It deserves for us to make an investment in it. And we have to do that if we're going to be globally competitive. So I think when a lot of people hear infrastructure, they think to themselves roads and bridges. Yes, but also water, also conservation, also clean energy, also retrofitting our schools. There's so much of that work to be done. So that's a big thing Congress is working on. My personal big fight, that's sort of Congress as a whole. My personal big fight that I've been working on is trying to eliminate something from our tax code that I call the single parent penalty. One of the big wins in the American Rescue Plan was an expanded child tax credit. Increasing the amount of that tax credit to $3,000 for children ages 6 to 17 and to $3,600 for younger children. But right now, the way that's written, if you are a child living with a single parent, you are less likely to receive that child tax credit because the income cutoff is different, and or you might receive less of that. And let me tell you, there is no discount out there for single parents, not at the grocery store, not at the movie theater, not at child care centers. The focus of the child tax credit is the child. And so we need to treat children living in households with different kinds of family structures, whether married, single, grandparents. We need to make sure that those children are getting the equal opportunity to get the benefits of nutritious food, adequate housing, and quality childcare and after-school programming with that expanded child tax credit. So eliminate the single parent penalty, and I'm proud to be partnering with Ayanna Pressley, among others, in working on this effort.
Thank you so much for that. We'd like to switch now to take some questions from the chat. Apologies, my my headphone just fell out. Hooray, we're all alive. There's children, headphones are falling out. It's great, it's a party. So if you have questions for Congressman Katie Porter right now, if you could drop them in the chat so we can ask them. The first question that's popping out is from Piano Keys Fun. Do you think the Biden-Harris administration will be able to make progress in immigration policy?
Yeah, so immigration policy is moving forward in the House already. We passed the Dream and Promise Act and a farm worker modernization bill. So those already passed the House and have gone over to the Senate, hopefully for action. And then we're beginning to work on a more comprehensive immigration reform bill while continuing to do oversight of the existing immigration system, which was left in very poor shape by President Trump. And so thinking about sort of all of the related facets of immigration in terms of thinking about the purpose of foreign aid to make sure that people can continue to live in their country safely, try to address the root causes of migration, making sure that we're investing where appropriate in common sense border technology. For example, understanding that most of the immigration that happens and most of the drug smuggling, for example, what happens at ports of entry. And so we need to do more there. And then making sure that we're thinking about how immigration can help our country and does help our country in terms of providing both workers, but also in terms of providing skills and resources for our workforce. So I think we're going to see a broader immigration move forward probably through Congress into this summer, but already really proud that we're delivering on the promise that President Obama made to our dreamers, that if they would come forward, we would be able to welcome them into our society and offer them a pathway to citizenship.
Thank you for that. And I know we only have a few more minutes with you, Congresswoman. So two last questions that are getting a lot of response in the chat. The first one is from Megan Prendergast. How do you think we can best help Asian communities during this time when they're increasingly targeted?
Asian communities?
Asian communities, pardon me. Yes.
Yeah. So, we're definitely seeing a spike in hate crimes toward the API population. In Orange County, the area that I represent, is home to the third largest Asian American population in the United States. And Asian Americans, one, really importantly, are Americans. Two, they are our friends, our neighbors, our colleagues. There are people that we worship with and work with, go to school with, and learn from. And we need to both condemn API hate and also make sure that we're fighting to provide a level playing field of opportunity, including for representation in government service and in elected office. For people from the API community. So it's really, really important that we think about this not just as what we have to do in terms of condemning a hate crime after it happened, but what do we have to do to empower our community to be more welcoming and be more respectful of people from different places going forward.
Well said, and super grateful for all the work that you do and are doing. Last question. In what ways, this is from Kaylin Parks, in what ways can I make change within my community? Especially during this pandemic, I find that it's harder to find volunteer work and opportunities.
Yeah, it definitely is harder to find volunteer work. I felt that myself, including for my children and some of the volunteer opportunities that they enjoyed. But at the same time, the pandemic is breaking down some of the boundaries that we had. And so I encourage you to join in groups, particularly think about joining in a group that may be more narrow in focus, but national, that you wouldn't be able to participate in if you had to travel physically. And so there are things that are happening on Zoom or happening virtually that otherwise just wouldn't be possible to participate in. And then I think make sure, and I know this might sound simple, but make sure you're signed up to get information from your city, from your county, from your state, and from your federal representative. And so we're seeing that this pandemic is straining all of those resources, federal, state, county, and local, and is requiring all of us to help respond. So I have people who subscribe to my newsletter, but one of the things we do is we try to amplify for them when our local government is taking those federal dollars and turning them into something like a rental assistance program that can be helpful. So I really encourage people to make sure that they're doing their part. And of course, those of us in elected office have to do our part to continue to reach out to communities and let them know what we're doing and how we can help. But I think that there's that opportunity with this pandemic. You have a little less commute time, maybe you're able to join in something remotely that you wouldn't be able to join in if things were in person. And so I miss that person-to-person contact, but I also am finding that I'm able to do events and hear from people and hear from communities that I might not otherwise be able to do so if I had to physically travel there.
Excellent. And I know we have like 1 minute left with you. We're asking folks to sign up for recoveryrecess.org. If you have a second, do you have anything to say around why it's important for folks to speak out and attend events during these next 2 weeks?
Yeah, it's incredibly important to make sure that your voice is being heard. We have real choices to make in the direction that this country goes. And the return, people who say, I just want things to return to normal before COVID, had a pretty privileged normal. For a lot of people, a return isn't good enough. There are underlying issues in this country that we have to address, everything from structural racism to the student loan debt crisis, to equal pay for equal work. And so there's a lot more to be done. And so in this next couple of weeks, as we have a president who's moving through his first 100 days and beginning to think about what comes next, as we have states and localities getting an unprecedented amount of federal resources, make your voice heard so that they can spend that money and make those investments and make that policy in a way that changes our community and our economy for the better.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us today, Congresswoman. And thank you to everyone who asked questions. We look forward to having you join us again soon.
Thank you.